I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here and good afternoon. I am Anisha Sindhi. I am the Director of Research and Programs at the Women in Public Policy program at Harvard Kennedy School, and excited to welcome you all to our Spring WAP Research Seminar Series on Make Work Fair. This seminar series will feature researchers presenting their work, often based on randomized control trials in the field, followed by a Q&A with our virtual audience. Today, we are pleased to welcome Professor Shuo Zhang, who is presenting her work on measuring bias in job recommender systems, auditing the algorithms. Dr. Zhang is an assistant professor of economics and computer science in the Department of Economics at the Khoury College of Computer Sciences at Northeastern University. Her research interest is in labor economics, platform design, and algorithmic fairness. She will be presenting her research today, which is related to Chapter 6 of the book Make Work Fair, which is what our seminar series this semester is dedicated to, a recently published book by our co-director Iris Bennett and WAP senior researcher Siri Shalazi. Chapter 6 is on talent attraction to cast a wide net. The research she'll be presenting today will focus on the empirics of job search and matching in online labor markets, including workers' job search behaviors, employers' recruitment decisions, and the role of internet job platforms in online job matching. Our speaker today will present for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we will have time for questions and answers from our audience. We ask that you hold your questions to the end of the talk, and please type your question in the Q&A function, and we will read it out loud. Thank you so much, Professor Zhang, for joining us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you for the kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my research. So in this presentation, I will talk about my paper about gender bias in job recommendation algorithms. And feel free to ask questions if you have any questions during my talk. So this is a paper with Professor Peter Kuhn from UC Santa Barbara. So the biggest motivation of this topic is the rapid development of recommendation algorithms. So why we use such recommendation algorithms? The main reason is that due to the development of the internet, the growth of the information makes it increasingly challenging for people to find the wanted information from the vast amount of data. So people rely on different tools to deal with this information overload problem. And the personalized recommendation is one of those tools. It shows every user a unique list of items based on her taste and preference, which is effective in supporting human decisions in discovering new items and find the related items. So for example, when you visit Amazon, you might see a page called, this is the recommendations items for you to purchase. And when you go to Netflix, it often suggests what to watch, called people who liked this movie also saw. And the news site also suggests what to read. So these are all the applications of recommendation algorithms in the online journeys. So the internet job board is another scenario in which users have to process a large amount of the data and find the valuable one. According to the statistics from Glassdoor, in the US in 2019, there were more than 2 million of jobs posted online, and more than half of the job seekers prefer finding job opportunities in online job boards. So while the traditional job boards simply displayed the job, today's online platform recommend the jobs to the job seekers. By applying the concept of the personal recommendations into the job application domain, the job recommendations are generated by algorithms and using the criteria that include the worker's characteristics and also the behavior and the match degree between the worker and the job. So here is an example of job recommendations in a Chinese job board. Every time a worker logs into the account, the website will automatically display a list of the job that satisfy her desire and interest. While job recommendation algorithms have the potential to help the worker and the firms find better matches, they also have sparked deep concerns about the fairness. Even not intended by the designer, the recommended jobs may reinforce gender and other stereotypes. We may be familiar with the context that men and women see different commercial advertisement. So for example, men see more products related to sports, while women see more advertisements on makeups. But when it comes to the labor market, the disparity in job recommendations will lead to greater gender gap in the labor market. However, while it is important in the job recommendations in workers' job search, we know little about the job recommendation systems, and the job recommender systems are black box, making it is very difficult for researchers to study, especially outside of the internet system, the internet job board. So in this paper, we explore the algorithmic fairness problem with a focus on gender bias in job recommendation. We adapt a widely used tool in economics research, the algorithm audit study, to measure the causal effect of a job seeker's gender on job recommendations, and to identify which pieces of the information and which part of the algorithms are being used to make recommendation and generate gender bias. So we conducted an audit study on Chinese 4 largest job boards. Specifically, we created pairs of men and female profiles that are identical except for their gender, and collect the jobs that were recommended to those fictitious workers. And then the difference between the job recommendations to male and female workers can be considered as the causal evidence of gender bias in recommendation systems. So in terms of the results, we find that the identical male and the female workers do not always receive the same job recommendations. And out of 100 recommended jobs, around 12 jobs are uniquely displayed to one gender, female or male workers. And in terms of the job quality, by comparing the different jobs received by male and female workers, we find that the only 2 female jobs propose lower wages than only 2 male jobs, in which the gender wage gap is around 1.5%. And also, female-only jobs request fewer years of working experience and are unlikely from the large companies with more than 1,000 employees. And furthermore, when we take a closer look of the words using in the job description, jobs recommended to women contain more stereotypically female content and less stereotypically male content. So finally, we try to distinguish different types of job recommendation algorithms and identify the potential source of the gender bias. We find that the recommender systems use the worker's gender as an input in terms of the content-based algorithm matching. So we also find strong evidence that the recommender systems use the recruiter's reactions to the job seeker's resume to make recommendations, meaning that the system takes the two-sided nature of labor markets seriously. But we did not find evidence of the algorithms using the workers' own past application behavior to make recommendation, which is different from the context of the shopping and the information retrieval systems. To our best knowledge, this is the first research looking at the gender discrimination in the context of job recommendation. While existing literature outline the explanations for gender wage gap or gender inequality in the labor market through multiple channels, such as the gender difference in their job search behaviors and the gender discrimination in the recruitment process, or the gender differentials on the workplace performance and the competition, we argue that the gender differences and the gender discrimination can happen at the very earlier stage, in which men and women may see different job vacancies in online job platforms due to the personalized recommendation algorithms. And in addition, this paper also contributes to the literature on the algorithm fairness. Recently, there is a growing literature of paper looking at the algorithm bias in social and economic life, such as in the context of advertisement delivery, the criminal courts, the mortgage approval, and the health context. And the two closest work from my paper is from Lamrick and Tucker, who studied the gender bias in the advertisement delivery in Facebook, and the paper from Chen et al. About the gender equality in the ranking algorithms in resume search engine. So this paper explores the gender bias problem in the aspect of the application behavior and find that multiple channels, including both the human bias and the algorithm features, can contribute to the gender differences in job recommendation. So lastly, my work complements and extends the research on gender equality and algorithm transparency in the platform economy. In most cases, algorithm bias is not intended by the designer. And our empirical evidence from a strictly controlled experiment has important implications for platform and policymakers to raise their awareness of the potential bias in the algorithms. So the rest of my presentation is as follows. I'm going to introduce the experiment design, then present the results on gender bias in job recommendations, then move to the potential mechanisms for the gender bias from different algorithms, then a little bit discussion. So we use a design of algorithm audit study to test the gender bias in job recommendation, which is very straightforward. We create the identical male and female worker profiles on the job platforms, and then observe and compare which jobs are recommended to those profiles. So the platform we choose are the top 4 online job boards in China, and they have millions of active job seekers and job postings, and cover more than 70% of the online recruiting market in China. So while the 4 job sites target slightly different labor markets, they have very similar interfaces and functions. So the job seekers can register the account for free and create a profile, while the employers are charged for post job advertisements and using the recruitment tools. Job seekers make the applications by sending out their resume, and the hiring agents of the firms can read and process the applications in the online system. So the first step when we set up the experiment is to choose the job types that the fictitious work in each job board. So when a job seeker sets up her resume, the job platform will let her pick up her current and desired occupation and industry. So this job type we specify as the industry and occupation cell. This information will be applied into the job recommendation algorithms and affect the recommendation results. So we consider three standards in the job selection. The first, we choose the occupation and the industry cell that have a large number of the job postings to make sure our sample is representative and to ensure that there are enough job vacancies to be recommended to the fictitious workers. And the second is we try to cover different gender type of the jobs. So the selected jobs cover the female-dominated jobs and the gender-neutral or gender-balanced jobs and the male-dominated jobs. And the third standard is the hierarchy level. So we choose the jobs in entry level, middle level, and high level. So for each job board, we selected 35 job types. So for instance, across all the job boards, we selected the software engineer, the salesman, and sales manager, sales director, and the administrative assistant. So then we design the resumes that are qualified for these selected job types. So the resumes are quite sparse and contain only the mandatory information that is required to set up a worker's profile, which is different from the traditional correspondence study. So here we only include the necessary information required by the platform. So in the worker's resume, they have the fixed format. The first section is the personal information, including the worker's name, gender, birth date, years of working experience, current wage, employment status, and contact information. And also different from the previous audit study that rely on the worker's first name to infer gender. The gender, a binary variable, male or female, is a mandatory input in all the job platforms in China. So since the gender discrimination may interact with the worker's age, so we made two versions of each profile, the young version, which has 3 years of working experience, and the older version, which have 13 years of working experience. Then the second part is about the workers' education. So it includes the highest education level, the time period, the university name, and the major. So the education level is set to match the job's requirement. So in this context, it is either bachelor's degree or college degree. So the third part is the desired job. So the desired wage, the location, and the industry and occupation, which is set as consistent with the worker's current ones. And the desired wage is set 120% of the current wages. So we expect a 20% wage increase for all the fictitious workers. And for locations, we replicated workers' profiles in the four first-tier cities in China. So this is the our implementation of the experiment. So in addition to the workers' resume characteristics, the job recommender systems depend on workers' application behavior to make recommendations. So to control for such differences, the paired men and women profiles followed the identical application strategy. So the fictitious workers are naive users in the platform who click into and send resumes to the top listed recommended jobs. So the whole process works as follows. In round 0, the male and the female workers with newly created resume log into their account at the same time, and we collect the top 20 jobs. And then the male and the female resumes in each gender pair were open to the public at the same time, meaning that the resumes could be found by the hiring agents or the headhunters in the platforms. Then the workers log off. This is the 20 jobs we collected in round 0. After 2 weeks interval in round 1, the male and the female workers simultaneously log into their account at the same time. So we record the top 10 jobs in the recommendation list. Then the 2 workers will apply to the top 10 jobs by submitting their resume. So afterwards, we will refresh the page and collect the 10 recommended jobs that appear. So in round 1, we first record the top 10, then apply for the top 10, and record the following top 10 jobs. At the 2 weeks interval, we repeat the round 1 procedure, which is round 2. Then we repeat the procedure again after 2 weeks, which is at round 3. Then after 2 weeks, male and the female workers log into the account at the same time. We record the number of views on workers' resume on hiring agents. So every time when the worker logs into the account, their homepage will show the number of views that is from the hiring agents. So that means how many hiring agents has viewed your profile or resume. So that is the main variable we used to record the hiring agents' reactions in the platform. In terms of our sample, in total, 20 to 40 fictitious profiles were created in the 4 job sites. And those workers received more than 177,000 job recommendations, consisting of 80,000 individual job advertisements. And in our sample, the average annual workers' wage is around twice of the national average wage of China in urban area in 2020, and about the half of the fictitious workers hold a bachelor's degree, and the rest hold a college degree. And for the matching between the workers and the job recommendations, most of my designed workers satisfy the job's requirement on education and working experience, and around 80% of jobs posted wage that are above the worker's desired wage, and almost all the recommended jobs have the consistent location with the worker's current location. So as we concern about the gender bias in the job recommendation, then the first and the basic question to ask is whether the jobs recommended to men and women are the same, or whether the identical male and female workers will receive the same job recommendations. So we first measure the quantity with the set difference rate, which is defined as the share of only to one gender jobs on the whole pool of recommended jobs to both male and female applicants. So for example, if we collect 20 jobs, then we count how many of them are gender unique, so only recommended to one gender, and we compute the share. So in total, the set difference rate between the female and the male applicants is 12%, meaning that in 100 jobs recommended to men and women, around 87.6 jobs are displayed to all the applicants, and 12 jobs are unique to one gender, while the applicants with the opposite gender in the same gender pair cannot see that job in the recommendation list. So if this kind of difference or the difference jobs recommended to men and women is caused by the randomness of the website computation, then the jobs recommended to two genders should be equally good, in which they are going to hold the same qualities in terms of the job characteristics. However, if there exists gender bias in the recommendation, the gender-specific jobs will differ in their quality. So we test this by comparing the only to men jobs and only to female jobs, and check their job characteristics, including the job's posted wage, requested education, required years of working experience, and whether the job is from the large company using this identification. So we capture the gender gap by beta 1, and M denotes the job is the male only job, and also we control the gender pair fixed effect. So this is our main result. We find that compared to the jobs only to men, only to women, only to men jobs have 1.5% higher posted wage. While we did not find the difference of the requested education in the gender-specific job recommendation, we find that the only two male jobs request 7% more years of working experience, and are around 8% more likely to from large companies, which have more than 100 employees. So in addition to this explicit measure of the job qualities in job characteristics, the words used in the job descriptions can contain the critical information on job's quality. And also the words and expressions used in the jobs can affect the job matching outcomes. So now we move to the gender difference in the words used in the recommended jobs. So we take several steps to the analysis of words. The first is we identify the most common words in the job descriptions. Then for these words, we identify words that are more likely to present to be included in the male-only jobs or female-only jobs. Then we evaluate these words to determine how strong this word is associated with the male or female stereotypes. So each word was assigned a score between 0 to 4, reflecting its perceived gender bias. And also using this score, we can calculate in terms of one individual job advertisement, the male and the female content by summing the scores of words it contains. Then we finally compare the gender gaps in stereotypical male and female job advertisement content. So for the first step, we apply the natural language processing method. We first segment the sentence, a trunk of text into the words and also the phrases, and retain the words with the high frequency. Then we combine the words with the similar definition, with the similar meaning, and to make the selected words clearly contrast with each other. So in total, we extract 172 words from the job advertisements. So this picture is the word cloud of the job description, the words we extract from the job description, with the bigger size represents the high frequency. So we can see a lot of jobs mention the communication skills and also the leadership skills. And some of the job advertisement mentioned the benefits, such as the reward and the commission payment. So we are going to introduce the words in a detailed way. So in terms of the words, when the job recommendation is gender neutral, we should expect that the word has the similar or the same probability to appear in jobs recommended to men and to women. If it is not the case, we will find some words that have a significantly higher probability of being included in some gender-specific jobs. So we estimate the equation 2, the gender gap estimation, separately for each of the 172 most common words in the advertisement. So we model this as a multiple testing problem and retain only the words with the family-wise error rate and the false discovery rate below 5%. So this table lists the words that are overrepresented in jobs recommended to women, which are 36 words, and 22 words that are more likely to be included in men-only jobs. We can see that, for example, skills such as assist and administrative are more likely to be overrepresented in jobs recommended only to women, and some other skills such as leadership and decision-making are more likely to be included in men-only jobs. So, however, finding this word is not the end of the analysis. So previous research documented that the wording in the job advertisement will reveal the employer's preference on gender and also direct the worker's application behavior. So the job platforms may mediate the employer's preference by linking the gender and the words in the job description. So we further explore the relationship between the gender stereotypes and the words using in the gender specific jobs. So we rely on multiple external sources to identify the maleness and the femaleness of the words. So the first source is the previous literature on the classification of the maleness and the femaleness words in the 3 papers in the labor market. Here we only use the labor market outcomes, and when we include more papers such as the political science and also psychology, the linguistic, our result is also robust. Alternatively, we conducted 2 surveys to collect people's gender perceptions on the words to define the degree of the maleness and femaleness in a certain word. So we do one survey among Chinese workers and the other survey English version from Amazon and Turk. And finally, we also rely on the large language model to this word classification task. But based on those 4, our model is rely on the ChatGPT-4. So we ask ChatGPT-4 if you would like to classify this word as a female-related words or male-related words in the labor market. So based on the 4 methods, we define a word's femaleness and maleness by a score 0 to 4. So we display the results in a heat map. So the overrepresented female words is in the left panel, then the male words is in the right panel. And we use the color intensity to denote the femaleness and the maleness of the word. So overall, the red color in the left panel and the blue colors in the right panel clearly demonstrate that the male and the female words which emerged with significantly different probability in male-only and female-only jobs are correlated with gender stereotypes defined from all the sources, all the four sources. So for example, you can see most literacy skills such as speak and documentation and administrative tasks are more likely to be mentioned in the female-only jobs. And the male applicants will see more jobs that require the problem-solving skills, such as decision-making, engineering, and working independently. And also the influencing, so these findings are consistent with the literature from the gender gap in the skills in labor market. And for the other example, the results in work form, we can see that jobs with regular working hours or the flexible schedules are more likely to be included in female-only jobs. And the jobs required the long business travel and night work are more likely to be included in male-only jobs. And in addition to the skills requirement, the words associated with facial or with the physical appearance, such as figure or facial and the temperament, are more likely to be included in female-only jobs. And the jobs recommended to men prefer workers who can work under pressure. So based on the score, the gender score, the femaleness and maleness score of different words, we finally measured the overall gender gap on female and male contents in job advertisement. So for each job advertisement, for each word, we define the male content as the total male score of its words and the female contents as the sum of total female score of its words. Then we normalized this score with a 0 mean and 1 standard deviation and estimate the gender gap using the preferred specification. So we find that jobs only to women have 0.58 standard deviation more stereotypical female contents than only two men jobs. And only two men jobs have 0.13 standard deviation more stereotypically male contents than only two women jobs. So that is to say, our jobs recommended to men and the jobs only recommended to men and women are correlated with the femaleness and maleness in the words in the job postings. So finally, we try to identify which parts of the job recommendation systems possibly cause the gender bias in the recommendation. So we take advantage of our experiment design such that the different algorithm entered the system at the different times. So we can isolate each algorithm's effect and examine the potential gender bias result. So we first consider the round zero. So the round zero is the resume open phrase. So in round zero, the job recommended to workers, it is the job just after the workers set up the resume. So at this point, the job recommendation algorithms have this cold start problem. So because the workers has not taken any action yet, so they did not browse any job advertisement, clicking in or apply. This means that the algorithms cannot use any behavioral data to predict the worker's preference. And also, there is no time for recruiters to respond. The recruiters haven't seen the worker's resume, so their behaviors are not included in the job generation. So the only information available is the content of the worker's resume. And the job recommendation in round zero has to be based on the resume content matching. So it can match the resume content with the job's contents, or it can match the worker's resume with other workers' resume. So all of this is based on the content matching algorithms. So since the only difference between our male and female resumes is just the gender, if we see the gender difference in round zero, so it implies that the content-based recommendations are in use, and also these recommendations are using the worker's gender as the input. So we replicate our main outcomes based on the sample in round zero, when there's no actions from the workers and from the recruiters. We find that most of the results hold, except for posted wages, we lose the significance. So again, compared to female-only jobs, the jobs recommended to men are more likely to be from large firms and to request more years of working experience and contain less stereotypical female contents and more stereotypical male content. So the second part of the algorithms is the HR behavior. So after the worker set up the resume in round zero, we open it to the public, meaning that between round zero and round one, the resumes can be found by the hiring agents, but there are still no actions from the worker. So the only new process between round zero and round 1.1 or round one is the recruiter's behavior or the recruiter's reactions on the worker's resume. So in terms of the platform, they want to establish the match between the worker and the recruiter. So if an HR searches and browses a resume, the platform will take this kind of action as the interest from HR, then it will be applied to the job recommendation system. So it will recommend jobs posted by that HR to the worker. So that means if the HR process is inactive, we will see the increase in the set difference rate between round zero and round 1.1. And also the HR views may positively correlate to the gender difference in the job recommendation. If the resumes are viewed by hiring agents more frequently, we can expect men and women will receive more gender-specific jobs. So from this figure shows a highly statistical significant increase in the set difference between round zero and round one. Round 1.1, this increase is around 25%. So the increase is actually larger than all the other following rounds. And furthermore, this figure showed how the set different rate changes with the application process. We do see when we apply more and more jobs, the men and the women in the same gender pair will browse more gender-specific jobs. And at round 3, the probability of viewing a gender-specific job is more than doubled relative to round 1. Secondly, when looking at the gender gap in the job characteristics between round 0 and round 1, we find there is almost no change in the gender gap in wages, education requirement, working experience, and the firm size. So here, we want to test whether the growth in the gender gap is significant between round 0 and round 1.1. However, we do see the increased gender stereotyping in job advertisement contents. So only 2 male jobs have less female contents and more male contents after HR channel is active. So we further check the relationship between the HR views and the gender gap in job recommendation on gender pair level. So we regress the gender recommendation gaps during round 1 on the number of views that the pair received in the previous 2 weeks in the interval 1. So we find that the resume pairs whose profiles were viewed more frequently by the hiring agents experienced more gender-specific jobs. Right? They experienced a larger set difference rate, but did not experience the large gender gaps in job recommendation job characteristics. So that is to say, when the hiring agents view more often of the paired resume, they do see more different jobs but the gender gap in the job characteristics is not significant. So summing up the HR reaction mechanism, we find that the algorithms use the recruiter's resume search to recommend jobs to the workers. And there are some evidence about the recruiter resume search increase the gender gap in stereotypical job language, but not in other characteristics. So lastly, we consider the jobs recommendation behavior, which happened between each round. So for example, in round 1, we first apply the jobs as the result of 1.1. Then after that, we refresh and collect the following 10 recommended. So comparing to 1.1 to 1.2, the workers' application behavior will be considered in those job recommendation. So this application-based process can take two main forms. The first is the recommendation based on history, which recommends the jobs like the workers applied jobs history. So which we call the feedback loop. It will recommend the jobs that is similar to your application history. And also the second is to find the co-applicants, such as people who applied here also applied. So that means we can use the application history to identify the similar workers and recommend the jobs applied by the similar workers. So this collaborative filtering algorithms is the core of many product recommendation algorithms in most one-sided market. So if the application-based, or we say the collaborative filtering, are active on the job board, this initial gender gap should increase across the rounds. So starting in round 1.1. Okay? So we do, however, we did not see this effect. So we see there is no, we found no evidence of a growing gender wage gap in terms of the different rounds and also in terms of other characteristics such as education experience and the jobs from large company. And there is just some marginal effect of the language change based on the rounds. So here's a quick summary of the mechanisms we find in terms of the gender bias for the algorithms. So based on the round 0 patterns, we see strong evidence that the content-based matching is active, which means it uses the gender as an input and to establish the match based on the contents of the job advertisements and the worker's resume. So in the later rounds, we find that the recruiter's reaction to a worker's resume may also affect the job recommendation algorithms. This is different from the one-sided market. So in the two-sided matching market, both of the worker's behavior and the recruiter's behavior are considered or included in the system. And there is surprisingly little evidence that the job application's history will affect the job recommendation results. So here is the, to return to the original question, we do find gender bias in job recommendation algorithms. By conducting an algorithm audit study in 4 Chinese job board, we find that the gender-specific job accounts for around 12% of the total recommended jobs. And the gender-specific jobs differ in the wage working experience requirement, whether it's from a large firm and the stereotypical contents of job recommendations. And these differences are caused by the content-based matching process that use the worker's gender as an input, and also the recruiter's reaction to a worker's own resume. So in practice, the users, sometimes even the designers, have little knowledge about the algorithm process. So, and also the black box of the system may cause the problem in real social and economic life. So the algorithm fairness has attracted attention from different researchers from different fields. For example, computer scientists have proposed a lot of ways to enhance the algorithm design to minimize the risk of unfair treatment for a certain group of people. And there's growing study of proposing economic measures to reduce the algorithm bias. So in the specific case of recommendation, job recommendation, in which every user want to see a different list based on the taste and the interest, the main objective of the recommendation system is to accurately predict the user's preference. So the fairness problem may be overlooked in this context. And also it is still challenging to define and to track and to validate the fairness in this kind of dynamic recommendation systems that the user's behaviors are recorded and are used as the data to generate the recommendation. So finally, while we observe the gender difference and gender bias in the recommendation systems, we cannot observe in the actual labor market how the gender bias in recommendation will affect the workers' job search behaviors as well as their recruitment outcomes. So we hope the further research based on the field experiment or internal data from the job sites can answer those questions. Okay, that brings me to the end of my presentation, and thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this incredibly rich presentation. And you're a detective, we have to say, on how you dissected everything and how it came together. So as Anisha just wrote into the chat, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. But if I may, I might start off with a question. And that is, I was surprised that you don't see a bigger trend over time. Meaning it feels like round zero is incredibly important. So what happens just from the get-go is incredibly important. And then I think you find some of this, that it is driven by how the recruiters behave. So the algorithm learns what recruiters are doing, but the algorithm doesn't seem to update based on the workers or the applicants' kind of search behavior. Were you surprised by that? And why do you think that is?
Yeah. So we do see in most of the recommendation applications, the collaborative filtering or the behavioral history-based algorithms takes the main effect. But in this two-sided market, we think that the recruiter's reaction is more important than this kind of pure recommendations. And also, so we have another test that only compare the difference between 1.1, 1.2, and also the difference between 2.1 and 2.2. And we also do not find any like larger gender gap in terms of the application. So we think this kind of, the first is when you recommend the jobs, there is a limitation of the gender disparity, right? Because when you record longer and longer list, then there should be fewer and fewer gender-specific job. So we do see there is a convergence of like a stable or a steady state of this gender disparity, especially from some of the job platforms in round 3. There is almost no change from the round 2. And also in terms of the job application behavior, we think that they will recommend the jobs that is similar to the job applications history, but it may not react in an instant way. Right. So when we record the jobs just after they applied for the jobs, and this kind of effect may also absorb some HR's reaction from the previous 2 weeks. And also this kind of effect may not reflect by the algorithms in a very short period of time. This is another thing we think. You can see the within round increase in the gender difference is always very small, but between the rounds, it has some larger difference.
Yeah. No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I don't know, I see the questions, but maybe there are none. I'm not actually sure because I joined a little later whether I'm a host. But so Anisha, just jump in case there are any questions that I'm not seeing. But if not, I'm going to ask a second question. And that is, do I interpret your results correctly? In that this is mostly occupational segregation, meaning it's not so much that men and women are offered the same job and women it's not true that then women are offered a lower paying job. They are offered different types of jobs.
Yes.
Different types of jobs, just that some jobs and occupations come with higher pay than others.
Yeah, exactly. So here we control for the pair, the gender pair fixed effect,
Exactly.
which means we do see when the workers are in the same occupation or industry, so they have this average posted wage outcomes. And based on the association between the words with the gender stereotypes, we find like the female workers are recommended more jobs that can satisfy or that is consistent with the female stereotypes. And also when we look at the different results based on the different job types, such as the male-dominated, gender-neutral, and man-dominated jobs, we find the largest gender gap comes from the gender-neutral jobs. It's not one gender-dominated job, it's the gender-neutral job. And we explain this as the HR may takes the main results because the gender neutral jobs, in most of those jobs, they have more jobs to be recommended to the workers. And also they have like different choice when they make the recommendation, and the HR response or the HR reactions may play a bigger role in this kind of gender neutral game. Yeah.
I see. So that's a bit consistent with some other research that, of course, if it's incredibly gendered, male or female gendered, we don't find a lot of action, but it's in that middle ground where recruiters have some leeway, basically, in how they choose.
Yes, exactly.
So our audience is relatively quiet. So if that's okay, I'll keep asking you a couple of questions because I find it so interesting. So you talked about the gendered words that are associated with these jobs. And you presented the standard deviations, and I don't know I was fast enough to grasp what was happening. You don't have to go back. I have a very generic question. But is there a sense that this is driven by female gendered words more than male gendered words? It just felt like there was a lot of action for women focused jobs that come with female gendered words.
So in this table, we do find
Yes.
that there are more words in overrepresented in female than male. This is 36. This is 22, and also so in terms of this kind of view, our guess is our expectation is because the gender female words, the first is they have a higher score. Right? For example, the figure and the visual, they are just very strong female words. But in terms of the male words, like the planning or the decision making, there are some kind of neutral words describing their skills. Right? So this is not so male words, but for the female words, that words are very female. So that is, we explain the difference between the male and the female words. And also that's why we standardized in the job level, we standardize all the scores in terms of mean zero and standard deviation as one.
Yeah, thank you. Anisha, I saw the question, but thank you so much. I'm going to actually ask the question in just a second, but I have to make an observation quickly. I'm struck by these words also and I'm saying this also for our audience, because you're probably not as surprised as our audience is, how generalizable these words are around the world. Because you mentioned 3 different studies. One was done in Canada, the other one in India, and the third one now in China. And the words, the gendered words, are not so different in these 3 otherwise very different places in the world.
Yes, exactly. So for the words, especially the words from China and India online labor markets, we do see some, like we say, the gender specific or gender discriminated words, such as describing the figures or the appearance of a female. So that's why we think those research are like better match in our context. Yeah, and we do see there are some other literature from political science, from psychology, and other fields also these kinds of words. But you can just our results is robust to include more literature and to increase to include more classifications on the male and the female words.
Thank you. So we now have two questions from Shreya and Caroline, both
Yeah.
actually
Thank you.
along the same lines, because our audience consists of people who want to make a difference in people's lives. And so the question is, what can we do? It's a really big question, and I don't know, do you have the answer, but right, do you have a hunch of how the algorithm might be differently programmed to behave differently, or might we have to think about what types of resumes people post on job ads so that they're not, segregated basically in these female type and male type jobs, or any other thoughts that you might have? I know it's a big question,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
of course we would love to know whether there's anything one can do.
Yeah. So I think in terms of this fairness, obviously the gender bias in the recommendation, our basic assumption or the basic hypothesis from the labor market is if the male and the female workers have the same qualifications, then they should receive the job recommendations that as good as each other, right? They should receive the same quality jobs. But in terms of the perspective of the platforms, they have several interests to balance or to be included in their recommendation systems. So sometimes the HR has some gender preference, and also they are the profit provider from the platform. So which means the platform needs to meet the needs from the employer and also for the user. So there are some research about how the recommendation algorithms can shape the user's behavior from computer science and from some business analysis. So we do see sometimes female wants to see some jobs, for example, with more flexible working schedule. So they kind of comply with this kind of gender stereotype when they search for the jobs. So from the perspective of the platform, it is very hard to make the adjustment because they do not know what is the good standard, and they have different stakeholders to satisfy in terms of the job recommendations. And they do not have a very clear principles to make the adjustment or the corrections in terms of the fairness. And also, as I mentioned, the first the highest priority for the job recommendation is to make the accurate prediction on their preference, but not for the fairness. And also the regulation is another problem. It is very hard to do this kind of regulation, especially from the third party, from the outside of the platform. And I have the experience to work with one of the platform in the job board in China. So when I talk to their software engineer, the algorithm engineer, they know like sometimes they use the gender and they rely on the words bank or the natural language processing to do the match, but they do not know how exactly the gender entered the whole process or how big of the effect in terms of the gender, in terms of the job recommendation. So from the perspective of the platform and also the designer of all of these algorithms, the answer is not clear. Yeah, so from my perspective is from the labor market, we want to see that men and women with the same quality receive the same quality job recommendations. At least they show they have the identical or very similar choice set when they apply for jobs. Because if you cannot see an opportunity, then there is no chance to submit your resume or to apply for that job.
Yes, no, of course. No, thank you so much. I mean, my personal take is that we need more work like yours that examines these algorithms, right? If algorithmic designers, if there was regulation like in New York City, that these algorithms have to be tested for disparate impact before they're unleashed, exactly the way you did, then maybe there would be some incentive for designers to rethink how the algorithm is designed, how it learns, how it incorporates different behaviors. But we're out of time. I see we're at the hour. So with that, let me thank you so much for your detective work and for helping us understand how these matching algorithms can affect the men and women differently. We can't clap, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you. Yeah.
Our pleasure. And thank you all for joining. We will have spring break at Harvard next week. So we won't see you next Monday, but we'll see you back in 2 weeks. Thank you all for joining and have a great rest of your day.